Okay, let's dive in. We've got this pretty hefty stack of sources you've shared, articles, notes, all focusing on the Japanese lighting fixture industry.
Right.
And our job today really is to unpack it all, figure out what's crucial, understand where the industry is now, how it's changing fundamentally, and what the future might hold.
Exactly. And what these sources really show, I think, is an industry in, well, rapid flex. It's moving way beyond just selling lighting products.
Right.
We're going to look at how LEDs are reshaping the market, this really intense competition in new areas like wireless control systems, what the big companies are doing, and, the major challenges ahead, sustainability, digital stuff, all of it.
Yeah, and it seems to be happening so fast.
Yeah.
You see this definite shift away from the old tech fluorescence, incandescence, towards LEDs for efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this whole other race happening in parallel
Right.
for these like IoT systems. It's a really interesting moment.
It absolutely is. So maybe let's start with the big picture the sources paint. The market size, the growth potential, or lack thereof. For years, the domestic market was, pretty stable. Steady growth.
Stable, yeah, but now facing some pretty big structural shifts, it sounds like. What do the numbers actually tell us about recent years and what's coming up?
Okay, so the data shows the market was around 921.9 billion yen back in 2021. That was up about 2.5% from the year before.
Okay.
And then it was projected to hit 970.1 billion yen in 2022. Quite a jump, 5.2% up.
That sounds pretty positive, that recent increase. What was driving that specifically?
Well, a big piece was just the continued demand for LED conversions. Swapping out the old lights.
Still ongoing.
Still ongoing. Plus, there's been this renewed focus on energy saving with LEDs, partly the whole SDGs thing, global goals, but also very practically electricity costs going up. That makes efficiency really attractive.
Okay. That makes sense for the recent peak. But the outlook, it seemed to change quite a bit after that. The sources get more cautious, looking medium to long term.
That's the really crucial takeaway here. Despite that recent growth spurt, the market's actually forecast to dip down to maybe 947.4 billion yen in 2023, so a 2.3% drop. And it keeps going down in the projections. By 2027, maybe around 885.2 billion yen. That's down almost 9% from that 2022 high point.
Wow, okay. That's quite a projected drop just a few years out. So what's the thinking behind that decline after the big LED push?
It seems to boil down to a couple of things. First, that initial wave of LED adoption, it's starting to saturate. Most of the easy swaps are done.
Right, the low-hanging fruit.
Exactly. And that directly leads to much tougher price competition for the standard LED products. And realistically, it's just unlikely we'll see big volume increases moving forward on a sort of flow basis. The old stuff is declining, sure, but even the LED conversion growth rate is slowing.
So the overall fixture market is kind of maturing, but within that, the LED segment itself, that must still have some legs, right? Can we look just at the LED market specifically?
Yeah, exactly. Focusing just on LED lighting paints a slightly different picture. The forecast there suggests the Japanese LED market itself will be about $3.72 billion US dollars in 2025.
Okay.
And growing to maybe 4.58 billion by 2030. So that's a compound annual growth rate of, around 4.27% during that time.
Okay, so the core technology segment is still growing, just maybe not at that initial explosive rate.
Yeah.
Steady growth. Where's that growth coming from mainly?
The main engines seem to be industrial and commercial office spaces. The sources showed that in 2023, industrial and warehouses made up more than half the value share. Commercial was next.
And that tracks with the economy.
Pretty much. Back in Q1 2019, there was decent economic growth, about 1.8%, and that boosted demand everywhere, but especially industrial and commercial LED projects.
Right.
Then, interestingly, during the pandemic, the e-commerce boom meant more warehouses were needed, which directly boosted sort of B2C LED demand for those spaces.
Ah, interesting effect.
Yeah. And more recently, like in 2022, demand in industrial and commercial kept going, but supply also increased, which actually led to prices softening a bit.
Okay, classic supply and demand. Is the picture similar if we look at quantity, like the number of units sold, instead of the value?
Slightly different breakdown. Quantity-wise, commercial areas are still the biggest chunk, but residential areas come in second.
Okay.
And you can really see the link to real estate activity. The sources flagged up a big jump in new supply planned for the first half of 2023, maybe triple 2022 levels, especially in prime Tokyo offices.
Wow.
And on the residential side, land prices dipped a bit in 2021, pandemic effect.
Yeah.
But demand in the big cities is still strong. Sapporo saw land prices up nearly 12% in 2023. So new builds, renovations, that all drives demand for fixtures.
And speaking of residential, the sources also flagged the number of households increasing as a key factor supporting LED growth, even with Japan's overall population trends.
That's a really important point. Yeah, the total population is around 125.5 million, but the number of households is actually going up.
How does that work?
It's things like more people living alone, smaller family units. So you need more separate living spaces. Even if the total number of people isn't climbing dramatically, each space needs lighting.
Right, more front doors.
Exactly. Around 860,000 houses were built in 2022. And there's government spending, subsidies, infrastructure projects helping that housing market expand.
So the number of units needing lights, what do the stats show on households?
Well, back in 2020, there were about 55.7 million private households. And interestingly, single-person households were a huge chunk, over 38%.
Wow.
By 2021, it was 55.6 million households. That was up 8.5% just from 2010. So a steady rise.
And that trend towards smaller households needing their own lighting systems,
Yeah,
that directly fuels demand for fixtures, keeping that LED spread going.
precisely. It's a fundamental driver underneath it all. More homes, more lights.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and look at the industry's value chain. The sources map this out from, raw materials all the way to sales.
That's a whole process. But one thing that stands out is the environmental angle, comparing LED to the old stuff.
Right, the CO2 emissions.
Yeah. LEDs use way less power when they're on. They last much longer. So the total life cycle CO2 footprint is just dramatically lower compared to incandescents.
And Japan's electronics industry is pretty global, right? Exports are a big deal.
Huge. Exports are something like 60% for the broader electronic sector. Lots of companies have factories overseas, so thinking about global emissions is key. And improving energy efficiency is just a constant theme.
The sources specifically mention high-efficiency motors here, too. Seems slightly off topic, but I guess it ties into that broader industrial efficiency push.
It does. It shows the context. These motors are getting a lot of attention in manufacturing because they save so much energy. They're even designated top runner equipment.
Meaning they're best in class for efficiency.
Exactly. They're expected to cut energy losses by about 35% compared to the standard ones.
That sounds like a massive potential saving. Is there an estimate for Japan overall?
Yeah, the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, MITI, they estimated that if all the old conventional motors were replaced with these high-efficiency IE3 types, it could save around 15.5 billion kilowatt hours a year.
15 billion. What does that even mean in context?
It's roughly 1.5% of Japan's total electricity consumption.
Wow. Just from motors.
Just from motors. So it really highlights how central energy saving is across Japanese industry, which feeds back into why efficient lighting is so important.
Okay, that context is helpful.
Yeah.
Now, the sources talk about a new value chain emerging, specifically mentioning wireless control systems. This feels like a shift beyond just efficiency, right? More about functionality.
It's a really significant strategic pivot, yes. Manufacturers are investing heavily here. It's seen as a way to fight off stagnation in the non-residential market.
Because that LED replacement boom is slowing down, like we discussed.
Exactly. That market's maturing. Price competition is fierce for standard stuff. So they need something new.
And wireless control is seen as the next big growth area.
Absolutely. The forecasts are pretty bullish. They expect the market for these wireless solutions to grow from about 38 billion yen in FY 2024 to potentially 132 billion yen by FY 2040. It's seen as crucial for moving beyond just selling fixtures.
So what are the main advantages? Who's it for?
The main targets initially seem to be small and medium offices, shops, schools. The big win is flexibility and easier installation. You don't need dedicated control wires snaking through the building.
So retrofitting is easier.
Much easier. And the fixtures can talk to each other, enabling smarter features, better energy savings with sensors, creating more comfortable light levels automatically, linking into building management systems. It's a whole solution. The expectation is a big shift from wired to wireless control over time.
Right, moving from selling hardware to selling connected systems. And that kind of strategic shift, well, it often involves restructuring. The M&A trends mentioned in the sources really seem to illustrate this.
They definitely show companies trying to reposition themselves. Odelic buying Yamada Shimei in 2019 was a key one.
Right.
Odelic was strong in residential general lighting. Yamada Shimei focus more on the contract market, hotels, that sort of thing. So the idea was synergy, combining strengths in different areas.
And more recently, Wiltec acquiring Hodorux.
Yeah, late 2023. Wiltec is mainly in manufacturing support, like contracting and engineer dispatch. Honorix was the company set up to take over NEC's lighting business when NEC pulled out in 2019.
So Hodorux had that NEC legacy.
Exactly, quality, presence in industrial and commercial. For Wiltec, bringing that manufacturing capability in-house was a strategic move to boost their own value.
There was another one mentioned, Mitsubishi, that seemed directly linked to regulations.
That's right. Mitsubishi, known for wires and resins, bought the CS LED business in 2023. And the trigger was the Minamata Convention banning mercury lamps from 2021.
Ah, okay.
CS specialized in LEDs, especially high-power ones, to replace those old mercury HID lamps. So Mitsubishi saw a chance to get into environmentally friendly LEDs, gain market share, and find synergy with their existing wire business. It shows M&A isn't just about growth, it's about adapting, acquiring needed tech.
Yeah, those examples really paint a picture of strategic adaptation. Let's maybe quickly touch on some of the major players mentioned in the sources and how they're tackling this transformation.
Sure, it's interesting to see the different approaches. You have Panasonic Lighting Systems, obviously part of the giant Panasonic group, with a long history back to 51. They really led some tech shifts.
They went all in on LED early, right?
They did with Everleds back in 2008. And now they're phasing out all fluorescence and incandescence by 2027. They even supply components to others like Daiko.
Udelic seems different, more specialized.
Yeah. They position themselves as specialists since 1946, known for unique stuff like their circadian lighting for biological rhythms or fixtures with human detection cameras built in.
Yeah, interesting.
They really emphasize domestic production, quality control, huge product range, like 12,000 items handled in-house, and buying Yamada Shomei gave them that boost in the contract market.
Okay. Daiko Electric, another long-timer?
Since 1926.
Yeah.
Described as a leading LED firm, ISO-certified, broad range from homes to big facilities. Their focus seems to be on core LED tech and, crucially, those wireless control systems we talked about.
Right.
They have showrooms, they've won international design awards, suggests a push for global recognition too. They're in China now as well.
And Koizumi Lighting Technology sounds like their focus is design.
Very much so. Part of the Koizumi Senju group, they specialize in residential and commercial, but their whole thing is lighting-based spatial design. They even have a special department for it, LCR, Lighting Color Research, I believe. So high design, high color rendering LEDs, and they have a big overseas focus, especially in Asia, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore.
Endo Lighting started somewhere different.
Yeah, ship lighting originally, back in '67, then moved into facilities and homes. Now they're active in facility LEDs, focusing on high efficiency, long life, multifunctionality, and again, IoT smart lighting, ticking all the trend boxes.
And Yamada Shomei, before Udelic bought them.
Based in Akihabara, they specialized in medical and office lighting. Their niche was using specific colors, textures, dimming to create, calm or functional environments. That expertise is now with Odelic.
Finally, Hodorux, carrying on that NEC connection.
Right. Took over the NEC lighting business in 2019, then bought by Wiltec in 2023. They still have a strong lineup for industrial and commercial, including some legacy fluorescent lamps, leveraging NEC's reputation there.
It's really clear everyone's finding their own path through this disruption, specialization, design, tech, M&A. And all this seems to be building toward what the sources call the Lighting 5.0 era. What exactly is that?
Yeah, Lighting 5.0. It's the Japan Lighting Manufacturers Association's term for the industry's future vision. It's explicitly linked to Society 5.0, Japan's broader concept for a future human-centered society.
Society 5.0 integrates like cyber and physical space, right?
Exactly. So Lighting 5.0 is about how lighting fits into that. It's a shift away from just providing brightness towards providing high-value added benefits. Health, safety, comfort, convenience. It's the next step after, 1.0 fire, 2.0 incandescent, 3.0 discharge lamps, 4.0 LED.
So 5.0 is intelligent, integrated lighting serving human needs.
That's the core idea, using advanced integration of digital tech and the physical light to create better environments.
And this is where wireless control really fits in, providing that convenience piece.
Absolutely. It's seen as a key enabler for Lighting 5.0. Makes installation simpler, allows for that flexibility needed for responsive, integrated systems. The challenge, of course, is making sure these systems are set up right and truly meet user needs effectively.
Beyond buildings, the sources also mention some other expansion areas. Agriculture came up. Seems surprising.
It does, but it makes sense when you think about it. Even if total farmland is shrinking, the use of commercial greenhouses and indoor plant factories is growing, and they need specialized lighting.
For controlled environments. How does LED help there?
LEDs are perfect for it. You can tailor the light spectrum to boost photosynthesis, control growth stages. It's a key technology driving innovation in that whole field of facility horticulture.
What about improvements in the light quality itself for people?
Definitely a focus. High color rendering is a big one. The sources mentioned R15 fixtures.
R15.
Yeah, it's a measure of color rendering accuracy. These fixtures make colors look much truer, make skin tones look better. So demand is growing in retail, beauty salons, medical settings, places where color accuracy really matters.
Any other interesting innovations flagged up?
Well, connected lighting using Bluetooth for control seems to be growing. And there's also this push for high-quality made in NIPP-on collaborations, maybe bringing in traditional craft elements. It's all about differentiation.
It really feels like all these things, wireless, lighting 5.0, niche applications, better quality light, they're all converging to fundamentally change what this industry is.
They absolutely are. And a big external factor pushing this is the Minamata Convention. That ban on producing and importing most general use fluorescent lamps by the end of 2027.
That's a hard deadline.
It's a very hard deadline. It just forces the issue, accelerates that final push to replace the remaining old stock with LED.
So you've got regulation, plus maybe post-pandemic demand recovery, plus rising energy costs, all pushing towards LED right now.
Exactly. And you see companies like Panasonic making it explicit ending production of various fluorescent and incandescent types between now and 2027, clearing the decks for LED.
Okay, so LED wins the current battle. But what happens after, say, 2030, when most of the easy replacements are done? The sources seem to predict a contraction for some standard LED products then.
They did. For mainstay products, like those integrated LED base lights used in offices and factories, the forecast suggests the market could shrink by maybe 20% between FY 2024 and FY 2040.
That's significant.
It is, and it really underscores why finding new revenue streams is so critical for these manufacturers.
And that brings us back again to the heavy investment in wireless control systems. It's not just a nice to have, it's strategically essential.
It looks that way. That massive projected growth for wireless systems, 38 billion yen up to 132 billion yen by 2040, that's positioned as the primary answer to the expected decline in standard fixture sales. It is the shift from selling products to selling solutions.
Beyond wireless, what other ways are companies trying to differentiate as the market matures?
It's really about continuous tech innovation and adding value. We saw Odelic with circadian lighting and sensors, Koizumi focusing on spatial design and high color rendering, Daiko pushing core LED tech. It's about responding to things like health awareness, optimizing light for well-being, or work efficiency, moving beyond just competing on price.
And that focus on quality and unique features must be vital for competing internationally too.
Absolutely. Japanese companies have a strong global reputation for quality, performance, energy-saving tech, and good quality management. You know, Panasonic boasting over 50% energy savings with their LEDs compared to fluorescents, that resonates globally.
Did government support help build that foundation?
It certainly played a role. Things like the 21st Century Lighting Project back in '98 and the big push after the 2011 earthquake helped Japan get really high LED adoption rates early on. That domestic experience is a strong base.
Where are they focusing overseas expansion efforts?
Asia seems key for many. Koizumi having subs in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Daiko in Shanghai, rapid economic growth there, plus growing awareness of energy saving makes it a good fit for Japanese tech and quality.
What about established markets like Europe or the US?
There, it's often more about differentiation through design and advanced functions. Daiko winning international design awards shows that strategy can work. Plus, stricter environmental rules in those regions actually create opportunities for Japan's energy-efficient LED technology.
Okay, so leveraging strengths in quality, efficiency, and increasingly smart features to compete globally. Looking forward then, what are the biggest hurdles and opportunities the industry faces in actually making this whole transformation happen?
The sources highlight three really critical areas. First is human resources. This is a big
The
one.
skills gap.
Yeah, exactly. There's a challenge securing and, importantly, passing down the deep technical know-how from, an aging generation of engineers.
Hmm.
And attracting new, younger talent is vital. But they need different skills now. IoT, AI, wireless communication, not just traditional lighting expertise. So training, recruitment, working with universities, it's all crucial. Odelic's stats on average age and tenure kind of hint at this.
That skills shift sounds like a major challenge. What's the second area?
Digital transformation, or DX. This is flagged as urgent. Using digital tech right across the board, design, manufacturing, sales, maintenance, to get more efficient, cut costs.
Like what specifically?
Things like enabling mass customization of lighting, using data for predictive maintenance on installations, optimizing energy use remotely. As fixtures become connected IoT devices, the business model has to shift from just hardware to integrated software and services. So skills and data analysis, AI, cloud platforms become sources of competitive advantage.
Okay, HR and DX. What's the third critical area?
Sustainability and ESG, environmental, social governance factors. This is just becoming increasingly important everywhere.
Beyond just energy saving.
Yeah, it's the whole life cycle, reducing CO2 emissions in manufacturing and use, using recyclable materials, getting rid of hazardous substances. LEDs are already good on energy saving during use, but there's pressure for more. That Mitsubishi CS acquisition, for instance, was partly framed as an ESG move, contributing to a low-carbon society, enhances corporate value. Designing for a circular economy, using renewable energy, looking at the supply chain's impact, these will all shape competitiveness going forward.
So successfully navigating those challenges, skills, digital integration, and sustainability seems absolutely key to the industry's future.
It really does. The sources suggest the industry is trying to build its future strategy around those three pillars, creating high-value added solutions through tech, boosting international competitiveness, and making a real contribution to a sustainable society.
Which brings it all back to that Lighting 5.0 vision.
Exactly. Achieving Lighting 5.0 is really about fundamentally transforming these companies, moving from being just manufacturers of lighting fixtures to becoming providers of comprehensive solutions for spaces. Their future success seems to hinge on making that transformation happen.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground here, tracing this industry's path. From the market size ups and downs, the huge impact of LEDs, and now their saturation, to this major strategic pivot towards smart, connected, sustainable lighting, and looking at how individual companies are navigating it all.
Yeah, it's clear this isn't just about, making better light bulbs anymore. The Japanese lighting industry is really evolving into this complex ecosystem. It's about technology, efficiency, yes, but also health, well-being, and serious environmental responsibility.
And digging into this one industry actually gives you, the listener, I think, a window into much bigger shifts, right? How tech changes traditional sectors, how our cities and workplaces are getting smarter, how environmental policy shapes manufacturing. It touches on a lot.
Absolutely. And it leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? As these things we used to just call lights become less about simple illumination and more about data, control, wellness. What new possibilities or maybe what new challenges does that deep integration of our physical spaces with the digital world actually create for how we live and work every day?